Hey, my name is Moncies Franco, formerly identified as 248003, but that's just a chapter in my story. I'm still writing the book. I currently work for the Health, Homelessness, and Criminal Justice Lab, which is out of the Hennepin Healthcare Research Institute. And I'm here because I've been in your shoes, and not only in your shoes, but the circumstances that surround folks who are incarcerated, trauma, mistrust, all of that. And so we're here today hoping to have a conversation to be able to talk to you directly in a real way with information and education for you to make an informed decision.
Hey, I'm Tyler Winkelman. I'm a primary care doctor, and I also co-direct the Health, Homelessness, and Criminal Justice Lab. And I'm here today because I think everyone deserves the right to excellent health care. And that includes people in prisons and jails. And so I'm really excited to talk with you, with Moncies, whether or not it makes sense for you to choose to get vaccinated.
Yeah, and so there was a survey put out to the incarcerated population by the University of Minnesota back in November of 2021. And the frequently asked questions or the topics that were of most concern that came out of that is what we would like to have a conversation about today. Folks want to know, does the COVID vaccine work? And if so, why are people still getting sick after they're vaccinated?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's confusing, right? I mean, this is the first time any of us have ever lived through a pandemic. What I like to say is that the COVID vaccine, in my view, might be the most impressive scientific achievement we will ever see in our entire lives. When we think about vaccines, we often think about, like, did I get sick or not? And that's one of the things that vaccines do. They can help us just not get sick at all. But a lot of times the biggest benefit is that they prevent people from dying or having to have a breathing tube in the ICU. And the vaccines are super good at that. So it's still possible that you could get COVID-19 if you've had the vaccine, but your chances of getting really, really sick are extremely small if you've been vaccinated.
Speaking of the vaccine, people want to know, how was it made so fast, if you have any information on that.
Have we ever in our entire lives heard of, like, a medical problem happening, developing, and then, like, 11, 12 months later we have, like, a solution? You know, I mean, it was remarkably fast. When the pandemic started, it was clear this was going to really be a big deal. And so the government put a ton of money into this. I mean, there's not ever been this level of investment in any one thing. The reason that it was developed so fast is that it is based on technology that's been around for a really long time, is really well understood, and then you put the brightest minds on it in the entire world all working on it together, and you can make things happen really fast.
Yeah, and I'm starting to understand some of that, but I want to dial it back a little and just speak to the mistrust that some folks have, like particularly around marginalized people, people of color, people who have gone through the incarceration system, haven't always got the right information. The health systems haven't always been the kindest to those population of people or serve them justly. What would you say for the folks that don't necessarily trust how fast it was made?
Yeah, I mean, so first, I totally agree with you. There are lots of really good reasons to be distrustful of medical institutions, of, you know, people saying, oh, trust me, this works. So I just want to acknowledge that, completely agree with you. You know, this vaccine has been given to more people than any other medication ever in the history of humanity. And we have more information about this vaccine than anything else we put in our bodies. So There are a lot of treatments and medications that you should ask a lot of questions about that really have important side effects that need to be considered before you decide it's the right thing for you. But what we know about this vaccine is that any which way you look at it, the side effects and the complications of COVID-19 are worse than what some of the minor side effects are from the vaccine. And because so many people have received the vaccine, we can really understand sort of what the long-term implications of it are. Just a very well understood vaccine, and it really can help you stay healthy and safe in this really crazy pandemic that we're living in.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like I stated before, I chose to get vaccinated myself and the booster shots that followed. However, my brother and my sister have not yet been vaccinated, and they cite distrust, and I understand where they're coming from. For me, the decision was made with safety in mind, not just for myself, but for other people. I want to keep the people that I love safe, and if this is a tool or a step in that direction to keep other people safe, that was my deciding factor. That's what made me jump all in.
Yeah, I certainly have a number of family members who've chosen not to get the vaccine. One thing I'd say too is that if you've had COVID-19, we also know that getting the vaccine still helps prevent other cases. And so, you know, if at some point in time you didn't think it was right for you and you change your mind, you can totally get the vaccine. So it doesn't have to be you didn't get it and now you never can. You can always choose to get it.
Yeah. So segueing into the next topic, how long does the vaccine last? It seems like, you know, we're having to get another booster shot every 6 months. So how long does the vaccine last?
When you get the vaccine, it makes these things called antibodies. And those are the things in your blood that help fight an infection. And so as time goes on, these sort of virus fighters in your blood kind of go down a little bit. So we give vaccine boosters to get those fighters back up. And we don't exactly know how long they last, but so far from what we've seen is we think that the vaccine prevents you from getting super sick or dying for quite a while, at least a few years. Getting a booster shot definitely helps you from getting it at all. And so the most important thing is that you get that initial series. That's what really protects you from getting super sick. And the booster shots right now are helping you from getting it at all. But we don't really know yet. Are we going to need a booster shot every year? Is it going to be once you have 3, you can be done? We don't totally know that yet. Part of the reason is because the virus kind of keeps changing. And so we're trying to keep up with it. And we don't exactly know what it's going to do next.
So with all of the talk about the vaccines, people want to know what are the side effects, short-term and long-term.
I don't know about you. I actually did have a couple side effects after I got the vaccine. I sort of felt like I maybe had a little bit of a cold, a little bit achy, maybe a little bit of a fever. And the reason that happens is because the vaccine helps you boost your immune system. So I was talking a little bit about these fighters that develop in your blood that help fight viruses. And when those start to get produced, you feel a little bit sick, and that's your immune system really ramping up to be ready to fight viruses if you were exposed to COVID-19. So that's kind of why you feel that way, and it's pretty common to have those symptoms after you get the shot. But definitely something to consider. And you know, if you choose to get the vaccine, it's a great idea just to maybe plan to take it easy for the first 48 hours in case you do have some of these symptoms.
I had the same experience after I got the vaccine. Sore arm, of course, but because I'm not as tough as I look, you know, and so my arm hurt, just full transparency. But I also felt, you know, like I had a cold, or, you know, like my body wasn't 100% at that time, and it did pass soon after, and so I'm thankful for that. What I would just like to make sure is that, like, folks have the education and information to make an informed decision for themselves. What tips or what information do you have that you think it would be helpful, that you would like people to know around making their decision?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's worth thinking about, and what I hear a lot, is what are the long-term side effects? So this vaccine has been around for a couple of years. You know, how do I know what it's going to do to me in 10 or 15 years? And I don't have a perfect answer. You know, no one has a crystal ball. There's two things that are really important to consider. So the first is that what we know from decades and decades of work is that if vaccines give you side effects, you almost always know about them in the first 3 months. And so we can be pretty confident that because we've now been able to study these vaccines for 2 years, it's pretty unlikely that there'd be a long-term side effect that's going to develop after having had the vaccine for 2 years. Most of the side effects will happen in those first 3 months. So we have a pretty good idea about how safe these vaccines are. The second thing that I would say is that the virus itself has long-term side effects. So you might have heard of this thing called long COVID, and that's because there's a lot of people who, when they get COVID, they feel pretty sick for quite a while afterwards. They might have fatigue that lasts a year. They might have some shortness of breath when they walk up the stairs. And what we know for sure is that there are some long-term side effects of getting COVID-19. And so when you think about sort of what's riskier, a long-term side effect from the vaccine versus a long-term side effect of getting the virus, right now, sort of the best guess is that your chances of having some long-term problems are much more likely with getting the virus than they would be from the vaccine. Can I ask you some questions, Moncies?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, you know, you work in our research lab now. Your life probably looks a little bit different than it did a few years back, but thinking back to a time when you had been incarcerated, what would you have thought about this vaccine, and how do you think that compares to how you think about it now?
I was still in distrust, and distrust is rightfully earned for folks who haven't benefited from medical advances and information. So I would say, thinking back to myself then, I would be on the fence. I wouldn't be sure how to make an educated decision. There's limited information that comes in, and so I'm dependent on phone calls or letters or emails via JPay. And so I would only have information coming from the people that I'm in contact with. And a lot of times that's limited, you know. Prison was one of the loneliest experiences for me. People have life to live, and somewhere along the lines you get forgotten about. And that was true in my case as well. And so thinking back to my time in incarceration, I would have tried to make the best decision off of the information given to me. And I would hope that there is enough information being given to people who are currently in incarceration.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I think it's just really hard, if you've never been incarcerated, to put yourself in those shoes. And so I think it's easy for me to say, yeah, get the vaccine. And I think hearing from people who have been there and know how difficult it is to know what the right decision is for your health is really helpful and important. So I've been thinking a little bit about, you know, the power of choice. and the ability or inability to be able to do the things that you want to be able to do for your health, especially when you're incarcerated. And on the outside, we can choose who we hang out with, we can choose how close we are to people, and we can make a lot of decisions for ourselves. On the inside, a lot of those options are taken away from you. And so this is this choice about whether to get the vaccine or not is like one of the few things like you can really make a choice on for yourself. What is great is that it is your choice. And so in order to do that, I hope that what we're doing today is just providing enough information that people know sort of what the facts are and what the myths are, and then they get to choose. And whatever choice is right for you, I think making sure that you're prioritizing your health is super important. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Not a lot of decision-making ability while you are in incarceration. And so for me, during my time, I tried to practice being mindful of the choices that I could make, which took my thinking off of what other people are doing. Are the COs getting vaccinated? I don't know. Is my cellmate? I'm not sure. Maybe he shared that with me or not. Are most people in my pod? I don't have that information, but what I can do is I can focus on me. But whatever the power of choice is, whether you choose to get vaccinated or whether you're choosing not to get vaccinated, it's important to design your decision-making process around what's important to you. That's what I feel and think.
I think that's great advice, and that you can only think about the things that you can control, and you can think about what's best for you in this moment. So, Moncies, I really appreciate the opportunity to just talk with you about this today.
Yeah, Tyler, I do too.
I always learn a lot from you. Today's no different, and I hope that some of what we talked about today is helpful to people who don't have some of the opportunities to get the information as easily as we do.
In working with you, I know that you care about the incarcerated population, and I think that's what made this conversation special for me. And to the folks that are viewing and listening, I am just wishing you the best information and education for you to make an informed decision around whether the COVID vaccine works for you or not. Wishing you safety and wishing you health.